We are beautiful. We are strong. We are talented. We've been around longer than you think. And we are everywhere. We come from many different places and from many different people. We have a part of all people in us. We are a part of all people. We are diverse in our diversity. We come from love. We come from war. We come from an unstoppable curiosity about different lands and different cultures. We are here because we have to be. We are here because you need us to be.
My mother is Hispanic, Mexican, and my father is African American. But I was mostly brought up by my mother. She was a single parent. So I was mostly influenced by the Mexican culture and embracing that. I don't know too much about my father until I became older, after I got married. So that part is a little bit distant for me. In the beginning, when I was younger, I identified myself as being Mexican because I was raised by my mom. But I knew to a point when I was getting older that, I didn't fulfill like the whole characteristics of a Mexican. Like my hair is not straight as some Mexicans are. I don't have black hair. My nose, it doesn't fit the qualifications of a Mexican individual. When I was younger, some Hispanics said that I wasn't Mexican enough, like my hair wasn't straight enough, or I wasn't brown enough, or I didn't have kind of like that slang accent that they had. And then some black people said that I wasn't black enough, that I didn't talk the way they did, and I felt that I was myself. I didn't fit in a category. I'm Maria, and that's who I've always been. Now that I'm older, it doesn't really influence me so much. I mean, because there's so much a smorgasbord of so many different cultures and races, so it doesn't affect me as much.
I beat you.
It is not something that I think about on an everyday basis. I always felt like I was special. The only aspect of thinking about my race or my husband's race is when it comes to my children. Sometimes I think about how it will impact them, or, are they gonna marry somebody outside of their race? And when they interact with other children at a playground, that's when I think about it. But it's not something that I think for myself. I think when you come to a certain age, it's not something that you're so concerned with. You're not, at this state, I'm 31 years old, and I'm not impressionable by other people's feelings or their thoughts or their reaction towards myself.
My father is Syrian Lebanese and my mother is Caucasian Irish. It's not something I wake up every day and say, I'm multiracial. I love that I have dark hair and dark eyes and really great skin. I think that's a benefit from my dad's Middle Eastern side of the family. Sometimes people will ask, what are you? They'll say, what background are you? Or, a lot of times people will ask. And I think I have a look that people can maybe notice, I can't exactly pinpoint what her nationality is or what her heritage is, or just a different look, which is fun. I like that. I like looking a little different, not just like your average person. Learned some good culture as I got older. Spent some time with my grandmother and learned to make Syrian food, so I can make some mean kibbe. As a younger child, I knew that my skin was darker than my mom's and my brother's, and I knew that my dad's skin was darker than all of ours. And when you're little, you don't know. Like, little kids don't walk around knowing what nationality people are. They're just little and they see different colors. So when I was a little kid, I knew my dad's skin was really dark. I knew my skin was not as white as my mom's, and I would always want her skin. So I would put like my hand by her hand and say like, I want white skin. I want to look like you. And it wasn't that I wanted white skin, it's that I wanted to be like my mom. And I think that that's a natural thing for little girls to want to be like their mother. So I wanted to just be more like my mother. Being a child, I knew my dad was dark, and so I thought my dad was black because like in school, I was around a lot of other black people, but again, I didn't know that they were black. I just knew that they were darker. And so I would see other men that had dark skin and dark hair and beards, and I would think that they were my dad. And my mom tells this story that I saw some guy in a truck, because my dad had a truck. I saw some guy in a truck and I was like, Daddy's home, Daddy's home, Daddy's home, and it wasn't my dad. But I think that just shows you that when you're younger, you really don't put those types of racial labels on people. You just see what you see. And to me, I knew that my dad had dark hair and dark skin and dark eyes. And so when I saw someone that had that, that's what I associated with.
I think I put it like it would be a fixed position that ran on all the stations.
I think people can tell that I'm not 100% something. So they see a little bit of mixture in me. And so when people ask, they're not curious about, are you English or Irish? You know, that's not really what they're going for. They want to know like what ethnicity is in you, and it's Middle Eastern and it's Syrian Lebanese. So if someone were to ask about a culture, that's what I would identify with, not necessarily the race. I don't speak Arabic, so it's not like I feel like I'm immersed in that race. It's not like my father spoke Arabic. You know, he can't speak Arabic either. My grandmother spoke Arabic but couldn't write Arabic, so you know, I'd hear that sometimes in the house, but because that wasn't a major part of my home life or my surroundings, really people just associated it with either really good food, because they'd want me to make food. They'd want me to make some of those Syrian dishes or Lebanese dishes, but again, they would call them Greek. So they'd want me to make ethnic food, but they really didn't put much more association with it.
My mother is black and my father is white, and the interesting part of that is my mother is actually 1/4 white, but she self-identifies as black, so I see myself as even black and white. It's interesting because I feel like I'm simultaneously mixed race, which means being both and neither, but then also of color and sort of all of the experiences that come with being a racial and ethnic minority in the US. It's been interesting because the two sides of my family experience race in the ways that are so true to so many other people. So my father's side of the family, which is also Jewish, but for the most part, middle-class white folks. And then my mom's side, really severe poverty as black folks. And then for me, it's been interesting because my parents have always really encouraged me to know who I am, that I'm mixed, I'm black and white, and it's never been an issue for them. It's created some awkward interactions, particularly being asked, what are you? Cannot stand that question, it is so rude. First of all, because I know that they mean race, but to just say, what are you? Now that I'm older, I can shoot back. Human? I don't know what you're asking me. Are you asking me gender? Are you asking me race? What are you asking me? Sometimes I'll get a smart response back that's, you know what I mean, nationality. I'm American. Like, it's interesting that there's all this sort of ignorance about race that comes out in this one question. Instead of finding out who Eric is, they want to know, oh, are you black or white or Latino or something else? And then I know how to treat you. It's complicated, but it's also pretty simple. Like, on a daily basis, unless anybody asks me about race, I don't really think about it. I'm just Eric. There have been times where, because of some issues with race, and this actually happened when I moved to Indiana, that I felt like there was no understanding of mixed raceness, if you will, that people could be multiracial here, and that was different coming from DC and Baltimore, that area, where I guess it's more common. So in Indiana, it's less common, so I feel like I've been treated as black solely, and it was sort of a shock for me that, whoa, okay, is this what it's really like to be black? There was a while where, and I actually fought with my father, who's white, a lot, that I was starting to take on this. It doesn't matter that you're white, people read me as black, and I'm treated as black. So I got a little closer to, I'm black at the end of the day. But now that I've been here a little while longer and I've moved back to, no, that's not true to my experience, that I don't necessarily, I don't fit everything that is black, and I don't fit everything that is white. So back at square one in terms of being mixed race. And there isn't really a multiracial community, so I can't say that I feel home there either, and that there is no home to feel home in.
As far as my family, a lot of my aunts and uncles are married. Their spouses are of different races. Like I have an aunt that is married to a half Italian. My aunt is married to an African American. I also had another aunt that was married to a Romanian. So our culture in our family, it's not just, it goes beyond Hispanic.
She likes the cake.
We're brought up with every race with their own race, okay? Because I was asking my mom at that time, I said, well, why, you know? She said, well, that's why I learned from my mother, from her mother, and generation through generations. Because I've always dated Hispanic, but then when I went and I dated other nationality, well, my husband, but I found out that they're not no different than anybody else, you know. Even just because this is color, but inside we're all the same. If you want to date out of what they say, the comfort zone, it's okay, you know. You don't have to be within your own nationality. That's the beauty of it. People think it's just because you're Hispanic, you should be with a Hispanic. No, it shouldn't be. You should follow what your own belief, and not what somebody said down the line. Even though you respect them because they are your parents, they are your family, but you gotta follow your own heart.
It was hard to really put in words because it was very painful. Because at the beginning, to explain that I was having a baby by a black man, my parents weren't too cool about that because they always think we should stay in our own race, but I fell in love, I had a child, and he walked away.
I was very close to my grandfather, and his ideologies at that time was, you marry someone that's, the same culture. It wasn't that he was racist or anything, but that's how he was brought up to be. And he always embraced me, and he treated me more like a child versus a grandchild.
My dad did. He loved Maria so much. I mean, he didn't see. And obviously my father knew. He knew in his heart. He wouldn't come straight out and tell us, but he knew in his heart that she was, I do believe he knew that she was half black, half Hispanic. But then see that, to my dad, it didn't matter because he just saw the love that he had for her. And even though he was brought up like that, my dad always told, I remember one thing that my dad always said. He says, he sat us down, he says, look, I don't care who you marry or what he is, what color, what race, whatever. He said, as long as he treats you with respect and he loves you, and that's the most important thing, the love and the respect.
It was never an issue with anybody, or not to say, that they saw me as just black or Hispanic. They just loved me because of who I was.
When I met Nicole's father, when I met Bob, he was a very attractive man, and that's what I saw. I saw how attractive and charismatic he was. I never thought of him being of a different race. That just wasn't an issue. As our relationship grew and I knew eventually we were going to get married, I thought, we really will have beautiful children if they look like him. I thought that, I really did.
If you see my mom, people would always say, oh, you look just like your mom. If you meet my dad, people say, you look just like your dad. And same thing for my brother. They would say, oh, you're just like your dad, or you're just like your mom. My brother has reddish brown hair, he has light skin, he has freckles, he has lighter eyes. And it's really funny because I don't think that we look alike. I don't know if people saw us together, if they would automatically think, oh, they must be brother and sister. I mean, I have a friend who people think that we're sisters all the time when we go out, but people don't automatically, when they see me and my brother, they don't automatically say, oh, you must be siblings. But it's interesting that both of us look so much like our parents, but just in different ways.
I never had anybody say, oh, they're brother and sister. Now, I did have people think, especially when Nicole was little, that she wasn't mine. I'm naturally a kind of a brunette redhead and very fair skin, and especially at the pool. And here's Nicole, who has this beautiful olive skin, and I'm holding this beautiful dark-haired baby up against me, not thinking anything, you know, like there's a contrast, but I was always thought of, not always, but a few times I was thought of as the babysitter, or not necessarily her mother. And then, you know, nobody would ever say, well, oh, well, where's your father? Or what does your father look like? Or anything like that. I've heard other people say that they felt like then they were asked, well, what's her father look like?
My mother's the youngest of 6, and her older sister, the 5th one, Marie, her husband is from Jamaica, and he was born in Jamaica. And so my cousins, they are both half Jamaican, half Irish. Growing up, we really had no clue that this was a thing. We had no idea that we were multiracial. We just knew our dads were darker than our moms. It really hasn't been until the last 10 years that we've even acknowledged the fact that we're multiracial. I know my dad's side of the family, I know that they liked that I looked like them. I know that they like that I look dark hair, dark eyes. I know that they like that. And I think that it's easy to identify with people that look the same.
When Nicole hit college, 9/11 hit. My second oldest brother called me up and said, you need to be careful with Nicole and make sure she doesn't go out, make sure she doesn't, you know, that she watches herself in case somebody tries to retaliate against her. And I said, well, why? Why would anybody be malicious towards Nicole? And he said to me, well, you know, she's got that Arab background. And I was just floored. I was absolutely floored. It's the first time I'd ever heard anybody say anything like that. And I really got angry with him.
I never got anything directly negative, and not so much positive either from family. But now that I'm older, my parents have divulged a little bit more, and I think because there's not the most friendly history. For both my parents, there might have been an initial sort of, whoa, this person is not the same race as you, what's that about? It seems that changed once a child was brought into the relationship, in that, okay, this is serious. It's not just like, this person is having a quarter-life crisis and they're gonna date outside of their race. I've never felt like I was excluded from the family, and I think it's just, okay, you're family, and that's the way it is. It doesn't matter that you happen to be a few shades darker than me or a few shades lighter, that you're family.
If anything, it made me to be a stronger person, and it also made me to be a person not of ignorance. It taught me to, you know, embrace people of different cultures, and, you know, if someone is different than me, it doesn't make me not want to be their friend, but it makes me want to learn more about them and to learn more of their culture. When I went to college, majority of my friends were Caucasian, and it didn't bother me. It was just, you know, I like that person because of their personality or their values or their traits. It wasn't just because of their skin. A lot of them didn't know what I was. They were like, well, you don't look fully Mexican, but you don't look fully Black. They didn't know what category I fit in. And so a lot of times they would ask me about my culture. And sometimes I would get off by telling stories. Like, for example, they would ask what I did for Thanksgiving. And so I had like 5 people surrounding me, and I was like, do you really want to know what I do for Thanksgiving? And they were just sitting on the edge of the table like, yeah, what do you do for Thanksgiving? So I made this line. I told them that we make this big giant burrito, and we give the burrito God thanks for blessing us with this bountiful burrito. And they were like, really? And I said, no, we eat turkey and ham like you do. And we celebrate everything just like you do. Only Christmas we have tamales instead of, you know, turkey or ham.
She was in a school where there was different. It was not just all a Black school. It was all race inside it. And in our church too, it was all mixed.
I went to my friend's house. I stayed with him over like a couple days for a break during college, and we weren't dating or anything. We happened to be friends. And his mother came and she was like, oh, hi. And you could see that kind of tension, like, oh, I didn't know you were gonna bring this kind of girl to our house. And the father came and he was like, she's not white. And he said that in my presence. And I was like, no, but I'm different. So, you know, I kind of just try to patch the air or smooth it over. And we actually hit it off before the weekend was over. I stayed and I asked my friend if that was going to be a problem, if he wanted me to leave. And he was like, no, 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 I want you to stay. So I actually became really good friends with his parents before the weekend was over.
I'd say I have a lot of criteria for great friends, but their race isn't part of it. One of my really good friends I met in college, her name's Belvia Haydary, and she's the one that is, her father's Persian and her mother is Caucasian. And she's the one where people always ask, are you two sisters? And sometimes I'll just say yes, because I don't even want to explain, you know, when we're out at dinner or when we're at the mall or something. We met because we were paired together on a student government project. So it wasn't like I went out looking for, where can I find another woman whose mother is Caucasian and whose father is Middle Eastern? It wasn't my goal at all.
We kind of look alike too. And so when we met, when we were in college, we had kind of our personalities are similar, so we had kind of an instant connection, not only just, you know, chemistry-wise, just because of the kinds of things we're interested in, but also having multiracial background also is a way in which we've connected.
And it was really funny when we realized that we had similar ethnic backgrounds, and people just thought we looked alike. I don't think they say, oh, you both look like you must have some Middle Eastern descent in you. They just think that we look alike.
It's something that we look at as just part of who makes us us, you know, just having that kind of background naturally shapes who you are as a person.
And she's like, you know, it's funny, like as faculty who do this and then we're doing it. Like that professional socialization. Because that's the point of it, is what are you going to do with it? It's not just to get assigned off. At least with the friends that I can become close with, none of them put me in a box. None of them will assume, oh, he's white. Oh yeah, he's got that half black part, but he's white and that's fine for me. Or, oh, he's black. All of them recognize mixed, and they sort of vary in how much they really care to engage that. And I mean, I don't expect them to engage that because that's only sort of one part of who I am anyway. I've never had to fight with a friend about it. Everybody's been, yeah, you're mixed, that's great, that's awesome. And, you know, it's really awesome that you're so open about it and that you correct, you know, some assumptions or the assumption that everybody is one race.
As humans, there's always this need to kind of racially categorize someone. But being like a sociologist and wanting to be socially conscious, instead of just saying, what are you? I eased in the question, you know, at this like graduate student party, like, well, what is your racial or ethnic identity? You know, I was trying to be like PC. And, you know, he told me and I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess something else. So it was kind of interesting. So from that experience onward, I feel like it didn't matter, but I do feel like because he is part African American, that I do talk to him about, you know, racial issues I encounter in Bloomington or in the department. So to that extent, I guess it kind of matters that he's part Black, because I feel like we share something in terms of lived experience.
For me, I don't think it necessarily has a consequence one way or another. I mean, I think on one part it's something that we do share in some ways, but it's not something that stands out in every aspect.
We have more multiracial students that now identify. I think multiracial students were always here. Our student population, I think, is a little over 32,000, and about 5% of that number does identify as multiracial. I have just developed what I call a diversity panel, and I have represented on that panel African American perspective, Asian perspective, American Indian perspective, Appalachian perspective, but I don't have a multiracial perspective. And that needs to happen. We had places where people could identify as Black or African American, white or Caucasian, and other designations, but there was no designation for multiracial. So that was the first thing, even getting the designation there, which has now happened. And the people that I know have not only been working for that to happen at the district level, but also at the state level and the national level, see.
I'm Councilman Jose Evans. I live right down the street. I'm your counselor. How you doing? We're going door to door, letting people know that I'm running for my re-election. I am a city county councilor. I'm the first Democrat in history to represent this area. I represent more of the affluent, multicultural, ethnic minority races in Marion County, Indianapolis. My full name is Jose Manuel Inez Evans. My father is Puerto Rican and my mother is African American. I pretty much identify more with my African American heritage than my Hispanic heritage, seeing as how my father was not around to help raise me. Growing up, I remember some people saying, maybe I was treated differently than others, whether I was treated better or treated worse, depending upon who you listening to or talking to. But it was something that it was just part of life, and I never really thought of it as I'm totally different, because we got the same grandparents, we got the same family. I'm just, supposed to be Hispanic. And you have a family and everything. How you doing, kids? When I'm campaigning and talking to people, I can pretty much identify with more people because of my dual ethnicities. African Americans, I know the language, I can talk because I am African American and I grew up in a black neighborhood. On the Hispanic side, I don't speak Spanish like a lot of the more younger Hispanic generation here in Marion County. But being able to say I'm Hispanic and African American, especially for those two races, it's kind of like, well, you're one of us. When we talk about politics and people are saying, well, you're Hispanic, and so what do you know about the issues, or you're African American, what do you know about the issues? Just people are doubting, and I just try to use my position, use my dual ethnicity to bring issues up front and to be able to be a challenge. Well, guys, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. The beginning of our new campaign season. It made me realize that my message, and it didn't matter if I was black or Hispanic, but when I talked to people and I told them who I was, what I wanted to do, what I was going to fight for if I was elected, and how I would behave, how I would act, just giving people a sense of who I was and what I was going to do. It made them not look at the African American or the Hispanic, but I guess the majority of the people felt that regardless of who he is or what he is, he's the best qualified person, and I'm going to vote for that person, and that's exactly what happened.
I just love that our president, President Barack Obama, identifies as an African American, but he does not ignore and is proud of his white heritage. His grandmother, he loved her dearly, and she's responsible in big part for who he has become.
So having, in this case, the president of the country to be multiracial, there was a lot of media, buzz in the media about, oh, well, how many people are there who are mixed, and what are their experiences? Suddenly they matter. And that, I think that watershed came from the fact that he was so open about being mixed. The one person that was, he was raised by his mother who's white, so it's really interesting. And now, his family is black. They're mostly read as a black family. He's got a really interesting narrative in that way. So it's like this necessary reminder that people are mixed. We exist, and we have unique experiences. We have a lot of good leaders now that are multiracial. A huge example is Barack Obama. Watching that campaign and reading the stories and looking at the people's comments. There are a lot of people that are still racist. There are a lot of people that still believe that African Americans aren't smart. There's still a lot of people that feel that there's a group of people that are inferior. And being able to see someone like Barack Obama become president of the United States, it definitely made me believe that I could become I could rise in my political career.
I met Jose through the Black and Latino Policy Institute. Jose is Puerto Rican. Nationally, his father is, his mother's African American. He is the most diverse person on the City County Council. I think it makes him comfortable around a variety of people. I think that's the issue. How people react to him, you can't say, but he's definitely comfortable around that.
I think that seeing people of that stature and seeing the success that they have achieved and how they've changed the game, literally, for minorities or people, non-whites. And so I think that has been life-changing and kind of opened the doors. I think that overall, I mean, in some ways I think it's probably changed because it's inspired other minorities to achieve those levels where maybe before they never thought that they could. And because of that, and because they see minorities in successful positions doing great things and kind of overcoming the myths or the prejudices that people have always been told, that helps pave the way for other people.
I have 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, and they've all dated out of their race, and that wasn't important to me. Their spirituality and their kindness was more important to me than what race they were.
I was an equal opportunity dater back when I was younger, so it really didn't matter if they were African American, Hispanic, or white, or whatever. Race and dating was really never an issue. It was, you're Jose. It was, you're a football player, or you went to Cathedral, or you're on the football team for the university. It was really never an issue until, say, somebody wanted to introduce me to a friend of theirs or something, and they would say, well, I have a friend, his name is Jose, he's this and this, and then the woman might say, well, I'm not interested in dating an Hispanic, never, meet me or see me or anything like that, or oh, definitely, I definitely want to talk to him because I want to have, my babies to have good hair or something like that, it was always, it's an issue that depends upon the person on how it turns out.
I think that if anything is different, he can relate to a variety of people because he is multiracial.
My culture identity really didn't start affecting me until I probably became an adult. As my political career is, starting to kick off, and as I'm getting more and more involved in community issues and dealing with other problems, that's when I really started to say to myself, I'm Hispanic, but I don't really know anything about my Hispanic background. So, trying to take, classes to learn the language and reading books and movies and really trying to embrace that. I think that was that's been helpful. But even today, I sit on on a Hispanic board, the Indiana Latino Institute, and they've embraced me because I am Hispanic. And now Hispanics are looking for me to be a voice for the issues, for the causes. As I'm growing older, it's very important for me to try to teach my family a little bit about that Hispanic culture, even though I don't know it as well as I would like to. But just sharing with them because they are part Hispanic as well.
As far as when it came to before I got married to my husband, I dated different races. I didn't really start dating. I had a lot of male friends, but they were of different races. Like I said, I was brought up to just embrace people for who they are and not to look at their color. So, I had a lot of Italian friends. I had, a friend from Aruba who was like my really good friend. I had a friend from Honduras. And I had, friends that were from Indiana that happened to be Caucasian. So I dated whoever that I liked, and we had the same values or had the same, things that we had the common interest in. I'm a very honest person, so before we, even dated, I explained that, about myself and my race and everything like that. And I would always ask people if they find that a problem to let me know, because I don't want to embark in anything with any male if they found that to be an issue or if they found it to be an issue with their family. But most of them embraced it.
I think people who are multiracial are really good looking. That's typically something that catches my eye. I wouldn't say that I am seeking one type of ethnicity or one race or multi-race when I'm dating. I've dated a variety of men, and they've been from a variety of races and backgrounds. And I would say that what I am looking for is someone who is really open to a variety of races and backgrounds and cultures. I think culture has a lot to do with it. So I wouldn't want to date someone who had really strict views on what he thought was acceptable to date, or if he said that I have to have someone who is from XYZ background or country or race. And one step further, I would not want to be with someone whose family thought that.
I actually think quite a bit about how race intersects with other parts of my life in terms of gender, in terms of sexuality, and in terms of class and everything else. So this is one thing that I've thought quite a bit, and what does it mean, and what should it be? So I've caught myself sometimes thinking that as a person of color, I will be, in terms of my anti-racist ideology, I'm best in a relationship with another person of color. Is it wrong that I'm attracted to white folks? But then also I'm half white, so what does that mean? It gets really complicated. If I'm dating somebody who's white, it's still an interracial couple, despite the fact that I'm interracial in myself. It's just really complicated, and I have thought quite a bit about it, but I've learned to just follow my heart. So if I'm attracted to X, follow X and not think about what are the political ramifications and why am I attracted to white folks as a person of color, but is that problematic because I'm also half white? And if I'm dating somebody who's black, is that still interracial? Yeah, it is. I'm still half white. I don't think there's an easy answer, and the bottom line, I think, is that there's no problem, though. So long as we get along, so long as they're informed and okay with me being of a particular racial category or not, it's not an issue. The concern hasn't been, oh, I'm half black. The concern has been, I'm black. And I've been worried more so about the fact that it would be seen as an interracial relationship. I read as something brown. So, you know, if the person is not interested, then it never becomes anything anyway. And there have been instances where the interest has been solely because of my brown skin, and that cut that off quickly. I'm not trying to be somebody's chocolate fantasy.
In the social psychological literature within sociology, there's this such thing as like people developing cognitive schemas to understand their world and to make sense of their world. And so people need to have the ability to place people in categories and attach certain ideals about them or stereotypes about them. And so people are in a mental place of uncomfortable when they have to then deal with someone who may not be a part of one category. So being a part of multiple categories, racial or ethnic categories, for many people in the social world is confusing because they don't have kind of a cultural script in which to understand the person. And so they can't make these quick assumptions about them because they don't have the cognitive memory or understanding of what that may mean.
This is an area that I think deserves and has to be researched more.
Instead of just presuming that people identify as X, whatever X is, we know that there are some sort of external forces, social forces, your family, your educational experiences and so forth that shape how you self-identify. The one-drop rule for folks who are at least half black still kind of pervades. But it's a little, it's a little more complicated for folks who are half Asian, whatever the mixture is, that there's a little bit more freedom from that one-drop rule. So I'm really fascinated by it. So I do think it'll come up in the future, but I haven't done anything yet, unfortunately.
Multiracial individuals will probably experience conflict or uncomfortable social circumstances and situations. So particularly I'm thinking outside of a university setting, if people don't study these issues and don't have a language to talk about multiracial identity, then people come up with negative terms to describe mixed people, and so I'm sure that they probably feel alienated or isolated by people, perhaps.
In the same way that minority groups need to be reflected in the media, they need to be reflected in research, because we don't know much about the experiences of multiracial people. We're just now getting estimates of how many are there who are willing on the census to say that they're multiracial.
I think in Indiana, there's so many cultures, but there are certain locations within Indiana that it's just one culture. But that goes for anywhere. There's some areas that are melting pot for different cultures.
Their view very harsh. I thought it wouldn't be because we have a tendency up here to be so freely. But really down in the South, they treat them better than they do up here in North.
I think sometimes they see them different in a category that they can't make it. They're always going to be in a box. But that's not true, because everybody has a chance to make it in this world.
When I tried to talk to somebody that happened to be Caucasian, they didn't want to interact with me because they perceived me as, someone, they didn't know what I was. They didn't know that I was Hispanic or Black, and they just thought that they didn't want to be friends with me because of their ignorance.
A lot of people stereotype. They look at you so hard, and it's like, why? We're in the 21st century already. Let it go. Everybody wants to bring up that issue, but what makes me sad is they won't let it go, and this world will never change and be in peace if they don't.
I've always lived in Indianapolis, in the Indianapolis area. I was born and grew up in Indianapolis, moved to Carmel, then went to Butler, which is in Indianapolis, and now I live in Indianapolis. So I have really lived in a span of about 6 miles, and it's in a metropolitan city. So for me, I see a variety of people because I live in the capital of the state, and it's a large city with a variety of people. If I lived in a small town, there's going to be less people, less business, less everything, and I would imagine there would be less diversity. I don't think our entire state is diverse. Now, I don't know that because I don't have stats in front of me and I haven't lived across the entire state, but I think it's fair to say that Indianapolis has much more diversity than other parts of the state, specifically rural areas.
It kind of depends on where you go. Like with my work, actually, I go to a lot of rural places in the state, and so I know that there are a lot of people who don't look like me or who look like Nicole elsewhere, and so it's not something that, I think that for me, what I have recognized, and I'm sure Nicole has recognized too, is that to me, it's more about an issue of just not knowing people or not knowing someone who is of a certain ethnic heritage. And once you can identify a person with a certain ethnic background, it almost becomes a way that you are able to connect with that kind of culture, and so it makes it less scary, I guess. I don't know, I think it makes it less like they're so different than you, because when you meet someone who has a different background and you find similarities, it makes you realize that we're not so different. There are a lot of things, a lot of commonalities that we can have regardless of ethnicity.
People around me, it didn't seem like it was on their radar. I did hear some comments of, well, it does make it harder for the children, or society. I don't mind it, but society will make it harder for you. And I always thought that was a cop-out, because I just didn't see that. So I was raised in an environment where race wasn't really the issue. Your behavior, your culture could be a clash, your religion could be a clash. There were other defining dividers than race.
Hello to both of you. We are so excited to welcome the Executive Associate Dean of the School of Education at IUPUI, Dr. Pat Rogan. The name of the show is Multicultural Points and Perspectives, and what I try to do is expose our audience to perspectives from people who are active in the community, doing things for and with the beloved community. I bring in people who will be expressing viewpoints that are not often heard. It makes people think about things that they may not have been cognizant of. So that is why it's very important, and I take a lot of time selecting those people who I will put in front of those cameras, because I know that it's going to touch the life of somebody out there, our viewers.
From my own experience, and it's changed more recently, but when I first got here, it was, okay, there's no way you can be multiracial. You're white, you're black, or you're brown. I was being forced into not only a box that didn't speak to my experience before, but also a box that is mostly invisible in Indiana and also stigmatized. So I was being pushed into something that's not me, and also, oh, wow, Indiana has some race problems.
I'm originally from Texas. I've only been in Indiana about 4 years. And I would say in Texas, whenever we see someone who's multiracial, you know, it's kind of like, well, what are you? What is this person? And I think there's probably something similar happening in Indiana.
I'm not familiar with the sort of demographic characteristics of Indiana, and I don't know how many people are mixed race, but in that there's just so few people of color, it seems that there's little room for visibility for mixed race people. I was told that once I'm here longer that I'll feel more included and more accepted, but I still see an invisibility of people of color in general, let alone mixed race people.
It was the teasing of, I'm Jose, are you Hispanic? Or if you're Hispanic, why don't you have good hair? Or aren't you light skinned? Spanish are light skinned. Well, speak Spanish to me. Well, you're not Spanish. You can't speak Spanish. It was just those little things. I'm a new kid at the school, trying to fit in, trying to figure out what's going on. But these are black kids. These weren't white kids or Hispanic kids saying it. These are African American kids saying it. So because of my name, I was automatically different, compared to everybody else whose names were not Hispanic.
Sometimes they stereotype you if you're a certain culture, or they put a lot of stigmas on you, or they think that, if you're Mexican, for example, you might not be, you may be illiterate, or you may not have an educational background, or if you're black, you may not have graduated. So I think certain labels have been placed upon people because of that. But a lot of it is just they don't know you, and they make those assumptions versus getting to know the individual.
These young people who are biracial, what I have found is that they're treated worse in terms of student-to-student relations. When people get mad at them, and students, their peers, can be very, very cruel in terms of the names that they're called and how they are treated. Sometimes they're called names they don't even know what they're like, half-breed, mulatto, and those kinds of names. I find that they are treated sometimes worse than just an African-American child, a white child, and so forth. This is not easy. So when they come to me and ask me those questions, the first thing I help them understand is that I don't have a manual that says, when this happens, here's what you do. When this happens, here's what you do. These students have to understand the beauty of who they are, whoever they are. So that means that they are going to have to give them examples of greatness that come from people who look like them or who may be the same combination of them. Instead of having society or their peers identify for them who they are, they need to be able to do that themselves. That means they have to understand the beauty of their black heritage, or their Asian heritage, or their American Indian heritage, and their white heritage, see. So they have to be able to balance that and see. That's why I say they have the best of both worlds. They should start this process as early as possible so it can be ingrained in the child's mind, so when these incidents of hatred or negative stereotypes come up, then it won't throw them off balance. They'll be able to say, yeah, but here's something I need to share with you.
The thought that people are confused or mixed up, or that it would be hard to be multiracial, I couldn't disagree more. I know who I am. I know who I am from my ethnic heritage. I know that I'm half Syrian Lebanese, I'm half Irish, but I'm a lot more than just my racial makeup. I am a female, I'm an Indianapolis resident, I'm a great employee, I'm a Butler graduate, I am a good friend, I am a good daughter, I'm a good sister. Actually, I'm a great friend, daughter, sister. I'm a lot of different things. And part of my race and my heritage, that's part of who I am, but it certainly isn't the one defining thing, one defining characteristic. And I would hope that when people are looking at other people, they realize that each person has so much making them who they are, not just the color of their skin or maybe where they came from.
I think that when somebody says that, they are projecting their own fears or their own bias if they say, oh, but your children will be mixed up. Because I went to school with a lot of my peers were of mixed family. Either the mother was white or the father was white. Again, that's mainly what I saw was black and white. I didn't see a lot of the other cultures. There were some Asian and other cultures, but I saw that, and my friends had no issues, no problems, as far as I was aware of. We were a small group, and we bonded together as friends, and there wasn't any societal, well, you know, you're of this mixed family, now you're going to see prejudice. Again, I think that was because at that time we were leaving the 70s and coming into the 80s. And so I think time helped that. Our culture in high school helped that.
I try not to believe in myths, and one thing that's really strong in my life is my belief in God. And if I have a strong foundation with Him, whatever myths are out there or misconceptions, I don't believe it because I already know I have my identity through Him.
I don't know that I think that multiracial people are confused. I don't think that they think that in this day and time. I think that there are so many different races and mixed races, biracial children, that they don't notice it like we would have 10, 15 years ago. I think it's more accepted and that they're not confused, that they feel that they fit.
I think there is probably some type of conflict because you are kind of experiencing life as not just a black person or not just as a white person, but as a racially mixed black white person or whatever other racial ethnic combinations that we can think of. So I don't know if they're necessarily completely myths, just based on sociological research. Like there are some studies that find that there is this kind of ethnic racial identity experience that happens for people who are multiracial. So not that all of them are confused or don't know themselves, but I think it's something that they have to critically engage and grapple with throughout their lives, just because society is always going to bring it to their attention that they're kind of an other, in an other category racially.
For me, it always comes down to talking to individuals before making assumptions. And so, for instance, I have a niece who is biracial. So before I assume that she feels a certain way about something, I'm probably going to ask her about that. I do realize that there probably are some differences because there could possibly be that tug of war between the two different cultures, and especially in the sense of the way maybe she's viewed or he or she is viewed by other people. And I think it comes down to even what someone looks like, because even if you're multiracial, I mean, you might still look a certain race versus the other, or you might clearly look like you're multiracial.
I just think it's a matter of time, changes in the laws, and awareness that most Americans are multiracial. So I think it's an acceptance. I don't know if you've seen the show on TV where they go into people's backgrounds, and you're discovering there that the multiracial heritage of what it is to be American. I think America and multiracial entities are the same thing.
I think that we better get on the bandwagon because the numbers of multiracial families and students is increasing, and it's increasing because once again, I'm going to say, I think they have always been there. but it's increasing in terms of our knowledge because more and more feel pride in identifying as multiracial and knowing who they are and being proud of it. I think that we have to just make sure that we push this more up front because it is here, something that we should all be proud of. I think the increase of identification of multiracial families and children is going to help us do what needs to be done to treat people as they need to be treated.
It's without a doubt that ideas, characteristics, and classifications on race have changed over time. Whether or not you believe the stereotypes, our racial identity should not be a reason to divide us. We are all different, and those differences are what bond us. Being multiracial is just a small part of who we are, and beneath our skin is proof that there is more than what meets the eye.